So this is Not-So-Simic Ascendancy. This is again, I want to make the card Simic Ascendancy work. It is an alternate win condition. I love alternate win conditions. Simic Ascendancy, for 1 blue, 1 green's enchantment, says whenever 1 or more +1/+1 counters are put on a creature you control, put that many growth counters on it. At the beginning of your upkeep, if Simic Ascendancy has 20 or more growth counters on it, you win the game. And for 1 and a blue and a green, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. So that's what we want to win with. But we can also win by just putting counters and making big creatures. So let's take a look at what we got. Alright, we've got 2 Ozolith. This is the legendary artifact. Whenever a creature you control leaves the battlefield, if it had counters on it, put those counters on the Ozolith. At the beginning of combat on your turn, if the Ozolith has counters on it, you may move all counters from the Ozolith onto target creature. And when you do that, that will trigger Simic Ascendancy, because it sees you putting counters on a creature. So we have 2 of those. 2 Basri's Solidarity. It's put +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. And you usually have 2 or 3 or 4 creatures. 3 Pollen Bright Druids. This is a holdover from previous versions of this deck. Love this card. Enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature, or you proliferate. That means you pick all the everything you have that has a counter on it, or as many, whatever you want that has a counter on it, and you make another one of that counter. I absolutely love the versatility of Pollen Bright Druid. If it's early on, maybe I just need to put a counter on something. Later on, I've got 3 or 4 things with counters on it, including a Simic Ascendancy. Let's put an extra counter on all of them. Now, the reason you did see 1 white card there, Basri Solidarity, but it's not the reason we went a 3rd color. This is a Bant deck. The reason we went a 3rd color is for Conclave Mentor. If 1 or more +1/+1 counters would be put on a creature you control, put that many +1/+1 counters are put on that creature. Sorry, that many +1 +1/+1 counters are put on that creature instead. It's really a mouthful when you have +1/+1 in symbols, and then in front of it you have the words +1. And when it dies, you gain life equal to its power. But this is just an incredible way to just get Simic Ascendancy just flying up the curve. If you've got multiple creatures out and they each get a +1/+1 counter, and Conclave Mentor says no, they get an extra one. Oh, the Ascendancy goes doot 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 doot. Merfolk Skydiver, great little card. Comes in, it puts a +1/+1 counter on a creature you control, including itself. And then for 3, a green and a blue, you can proliferate. Add 1 counter to everything else. And if you've got a Mentor out, make it 2. Simic Ascendancy, Evolution Sage, just an awesome card. You play it, then you drop a land, and it proliferates. A couple of Hydra's Growth. I like this card. Don't want to overdo it, because, you know, if you can put it on a creature and the creature, bang, gets bounced. Bye-bye. But it is a fun one. You know, put a +1/+1 counter on each enchanted creature. And again, if you've got the Conclave Mentor, you get an extra one. And at the beginning of your upkeep, double the number of counters on it. So that too can help the Simic Ascendancy grow. For removal, you've got Hunter's Edge. So I run 3 of these. This is a great card. Put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Then that creature deals damage equal to its power to target creature you don't control. Now, here are the ones that are really powerful because of their absolute versatility. Stonecoil Serpent. Play it on turn 1 for 1, play it on turn 5 for 5. And, you know, if you put 5 +1/+1 counters on it, Simic Ascendancy is a quarter of the way to where it needs to be. That's amazing. So, Stonecoil is fantastic, plus it's got the Pro from Multicolored. This is the other new card, along with Conclave Mentor, that really makes this deck sing. Wildwood Scourge. It enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it. So, if you pay 5 mana, it's going to have 4 +1/+1 counters. But then whenever 1 or more +1/+1 counters are put on another non-Hydra creature, and most of the creatures in here are not Hydra, then you put a +1/+1 counter on Wildwood Scourge. And again, if you have the Conclave Mentor, let's make it 2. The only Hydra here, Hydra's growth does not make your creature a Hydra. The only Hydra is Hydroid Krasis. We just got a couple of them. But it's another one. Now you got to pay a couple extra mana plus the X, but again, it comes in with X creatures, X counters, and so that's pretty useful and versatile. And then we've got 1 plains, 1 island, 4 forests, because green is the big color here. We've got Hallowed Fountains, 1 Hallowed Fountain, 4 Temple Gardens, 4 Breeding Pools, 3 Temples of Mystery, 2 Fabled Passages, and 4 Karn's Bastion, which proliferates. That's why we have it. In the sideboard, we got a couple Feet of Resistance to put a +1/+1 counter on a creature and give it protection from the color of our choice. Aether Gust, Scavenging Ooze. He just missed the cut in this deck. Wilt, Mystical Dispute, Pledge of Unity to put a +1/+1 counter on everything. 1 more Hunter's Edge, and then 1 Roelesque, which you put 2 +1/+1 counters on another target creature when it enters the battlefield, and when it dies, you proliferate, then you proliferate again. It's more for when you're going long, I find. And that is Not-So-Simic Ascendancy, our Bant Simic Ascendancy deck.